Hi, I'm Lowell, 78 years old, retired school teacher, and until recently, I thought my daughter still loved me. She said the assisted living was temporary, just a gentle transition, but then my grill disappeared, my landline went dead, my house sold behind my back, the birthday BBQ we'd had for decades, replaced with a live stream where I didn't exist. Now I'm sitting in a stranger's room with cold oatmeal and a locked phone line, wondering, was I just a burden she couldn't wait to cash out? What kind of daughter does that? And how long had she been planning it? The sun filtered through the bare limbs of the maple tree out front, casting narrow streaks across the lawn I'd trimmed religiously for 4 decades. I was wiping down the old cast-iron grill, my fingers tracing the handle out of habit. Not urgency. It wasn't even lit, just part of the ritual. I'd done this every spring since Loretta passed, always 3 weeks before my birthday. That grill had outlasted 2 cars, a dog, and now, it seemed, most of my patience. I'd already stacked the folding chairs, wiped the dust off the patio table, and left a paper list on the counter with notes for peach cobbler ingredients. But something in my gut whispered this year would be different, and not in a new beginnings kind of way. I wasn't sure why. Not yet. I heard tires on gravel. Fast. Not slow like someone arriving with warmth. I turned just as Tamsin's Prius pulled up crooked along the curb, her door swinging open before the engine even cut. She had on that pastel workout outfit she always wore when she wanted to look bright, like she wasn't carrying bad news. "Hey, Dad," she said with that chirpy cheer that didn't match her eyes. "Thought I'd swing by. Quick visit." She walked right past me, clutching a cream-colored folder in one hand and her phone in the other. "Got something for you to consider," she added, setting the folder neatly on the kitchen table as if it were just another pizza flyer. I followed her inside, drying my hands with the towel I always kept draped over my shoulder. "Something wrong?" I asked, though I knew better. When your grown kid starts visiting out of nowhere with folders, it's never about how good the lawn looks. "Oh no," she said, waving it off. "Just options. You know how it is, just looking ahead." She flipped open the folder to a page that read, "Meadow Light Assisted Living" in cursive that tried too hard to be comforting. "They've got great reviews, and the food organic. You'd love it." I didn't sit. She didn't either. I looked down at the brochure. "You think I need this?" "It's not about need. It's about peace of mind. Mine too," she added, a little too fast. "I've been making my own peace just fine. Thanks." I tried to keep my voice level. No point getting angry over a brochure. Not yet. "Just think about it, okay?" she said, grabbing her phone again like she was already halfway out the door. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen as she glanced once around the room. She lingered on the cabinet knobs I installed myself, the faded photo of Loretta and me on our anniversary, the grill she never once touched. Then she said, "You know, I'm just trying to help. Dad." "Is that what this is?" I asked. Quieter than I expected. By the time I turned around, she was already halfway to her car. After the door clicked shut, the house grew quiet again, like it had exhaled. I stayed standing for a while before sitting at the table and staring at the folder. I didn't open it. Instead, I went outside and sat on the porch, where the light was softer and time felt more forgiving. I leaned back and watched the wind stir the leaves that hadn't yet fully returned to the maple. Funny how you notice little things more when you're trying to ignore something big. I thought about Tamsin's last visit, 6 months ago, right after Thanksgiving. She had shown up with the same tight smile, the same rushed voice. Then, too, she had stayed just long enough to make it feel rehearsed. The difference today was the folder, and the glance. That long, quiet scan of the house. I picked up my coffee cup, still warm. Loretta would have rolled her eyes at the way I'd let it go lukewarm. She used to tease me about that. "Why brew it if you're just going to ignore it?" she'd ask, smirking from the sink. I missed her most in these quiet interludes. My gaze landed again on the folder, untouched. I wondered if Tamsin even noticed the little digital recorder she kept by her purse, the way its red light blinked just once as she said, "You'd love it." Maybe she thought I wouldn't catch that. Maybe she didn't care. I closed my eyes, replaying the moment she'd asked last Thanksgiving. You ever think you'd be better off somewhere with a bit more support? I had replied. Maybe. We'll see. Back then, it had felt harmless. Now, I wasn't so sure. Back then, she hadn't left behind paperwork. The rest of the afternoon crawled. I puttered around the garage, moving tools I didn't need, oiling hinges that weren't squeaking, anything to keep from opening that folder. I told myself I wasn't afraid, just not ready. There's a difference. I told myself that more than once. As evening fell, the shadows stretched long across the porch. I stood there, looking out at the yard where Brielle had once played tag, where Loretta had hung wind chimes. That grill, still spotless from my earlier wipe-down, stood sentinel, like it was waiting too. I finally stepped back into the house and walked over to the kitchen table. The folder was still where she left it, centered perfectly. I picked it up. The weight of it wasn't much, just some glossy pages and a few staples, but somehow, in my hand, it felt heavier than it should, heavier than paper, heavier than options. I didn't open it, not yet, but I knew this much. Whatever was in there, it wasn't just about living, it was about being removed. I hadn't opened the folder, but it felt like it had already opened something inside me. That thought stayed with me through the night. Sleep was shallow, more a series of memories and unfinished sentences than rest. And when I opened my eyes the next morning, it was the quiet that startled me. The house was never loud, not since Loretta passed, but this was different, not peaceful, not still, just cut off. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like thunder against the absence. I shuffled toward the kitchen for coffee. That's when I noticed the internet router's light, dead. I tapped it gently, then checked the power strip, plugged in. No blinking, no warmth. I walked to the landline on the side table, lifted the receiver, nothing. Just a flat, lifeless tone that reminded me of heart monitors gone silent. Stepping out onto the porch, I scanned the driveway. Tamsin's Prius was gone. No note, not even a text. I turned and looked back at the house. Every inch of it mine, every crack in the molding familiar. But something had changed overnight. I just couldn't name it yet. Back inside, I opened my old laptop, the one I'd used mostly to check emails from Marvin and June or look up the weather. It took its time booting up, just like always. I waited, arms folded, until the spinning wheel finally settled. But the Wi-Fi icon stayed grayed out. I refreshed. Nothing. That's when I realized the modem, the small white box that had sat quietly on the hallway shelf for years, wasn't there. I checked the plug below it. Still warm. Someone had removed it not long ago. I checked the kitchen next, opened the drawer where we kept batteries, notepads, loose keys. Sitting right there on top of a folded dish towel was the phone cord for the landline, coiled up neat like it had never been used. I leaned against the counter, my hands flat on the tile. "Why?" I said out loud, though no one was around to answer. The air inside the house began to feel tight. I opened the window above the sink. That helped. The birds outside kept on singing, indifferent. But inside, a new kind of silence had taken hold, deliberate, precise, sterile. I grabbed my phone and checked voicemail. Nothing from Marvin, nothing from June. We'd talked just last week. He said he'd bring over her famous peach cobbler for the barbecue. Now, not a word. Could she have? I stopped myself. But the seed had already been planted. Tamsin had said, "Don't worry. I'll coordinate everything this year." I had nodded, grateful at the time. Let her take some of the weight, I'd thought. She's just trying to help, I told myself again, but help doesn't come with unplugged routers. I wandered to the garage to clear my head, dusted off my tools, rearranged a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Then the landline rang. Only it couldn't have. I ran back inside. The screen flashed once, then silence. A voicemail came through a moment later, from an unknown number. I played it. "Lowell? It's Marvin. I'm using Lucille's phone. Thought I should check. Just got your daughter's email saying the BBQ was canceled. Said it's not safe for you to host. Health reasons. We were surprised, but figured you'd call to confirm. Anyway, Let me know. June's upset. She already made 2 cobblers. I paused the message halfway through and sat down. My ears rang. I'd told no one the event was cancelled. Certainly not Marvin. I had just wiped down the grill the day before. I looked down at the phone, as if it might offer an explanation. She cancelled it, I muttered, without even telling me. The room seemed to tip slightly, as if reality was adjusting itself. I opened the fridge, stared at the covered tray of marinating ribs. Still there. Still waiting. I leaned against the fridge door and replayed every word from Tamsin's visit yesterday. Just options, she'd said. You don't have to decide now. But she hadn't mentioned the BBQ. Not once. Not even in passing. She had coordinated everything. All right, right out from under me. Later that afternoon, I passed the dining room and something made me stop. There was an empty space on the second shelf where the navy blue photo album used to be. The one Loretta had put together after our 50th anniversary. The one with Tamsin's childhood birthdays and Brielle's first time on the swing set. I checked the other shelves. Nothing looked disturbed, but the gap was unmistakable. It wasn't about a party anymore, or brochures. It was about control. No, it was about erasure. As evening fell, I sat in the hallway with the phone cord still in my hand. The silence around me wasn't just technological, it was surgical. She's removing me, I whispered, piece by piece. I hadn't said a word out loud, but in my heart, something had stood up straight again. The silence wasn't just a gap between sounds anymore, it was a language. That morning, I stepped outside hoping air would do what coffee couldn't. My knees cracked like they were agreeing with me, and the wind had the smell of old soil, the kind you only get in early spring when the ground hasn't quite decided to wake up. Near the shed, 2 cardboard boxes sat under the awning. I didn't remember putting them there. One was labeled books, the other albums. Both were taped up clean, no dust on top. I stood over them, then peeled back the top of the albums box. My breath caught. It was the navy blue album that had been missing from the living room shelf, the same one Loretta used to take out every Christmas. It held everything from our first mortgage papers to the hospital tag they gave Brielle when she was born. My hands trembled as I pulled the album out. It was heavier than I remembered, though maybe it was just me who felt heavier. Tucked between the pages of our Niagara Falls trip was something I hadn't seen in years, an envelope. The name Lowell written in looping cursive, Loretta's hand. My name from a woman who'd been gone 9 years now. I sat down on the porch steps before my knees gave out. The envelope was sealed. I ran my thumb over the flap. Pausing, I remembered the little cough she'd always try to hide when she was nervous. She'd done it the night we found out. Stage 3 ovarian. She made a list on the back of an envelope that night. Groceries, meds, life insurance contact. I never thought she'd written more than that. I opened it, slowly. The ink had faded a little, but her voice came through loud and steady. Lowell, if you're reading this, I probably didn't get the chance to say everything I wanted. I trust your judgment. But if our daughter ever starts talking about taking you out of the house, please don't go. This place is your heart as much as mine. Don't let anyone take it from you. Promise me that. I read it 3 times, then folded it, put it back in the envelope, and pressed it to my chest. My heart didn't race. It steadied, like it was hearing something it had been waiting for. By mid-morning, I was back on the porch with a cup of black coffee, staring out at the street, not really seeing anything, just remembering. The day we broke ground on this house, Loretta was wearing those god-awful plaid pants she loved. I hated them. She said they made her feel young. That was enough for me. Tamsin had been 10 when we moved in. She'd helped me paint her room peach, said she hated pink because all the other girls like it. I never thought that defiance would grow into this. Silent strategies, hidden emails. A voice interrupted the quiet. You okay, Lowell? Eunice Mering stood at her side gate, gripping a small watering can. Her back was bent, but her eyes were sharp. I hesitated. I'm not sure. She tilted her head, walked over slowly, set the can down. Tell me. And I did. Not everything. Just the basics. About the folder, the internet, the BBQ. Her brow furrowed deeper with every sentence. She didn't gasp. She didn't interrupt, just waited until I finished. My son did the same thing, she finally said. Said it was time I lived somewhere safer. Sold my house while I was at the podiatrist. I stared at her, stunned. Put me in Pine Grove, state-run, no windows that open. Took 2 years and a legal aid lawyer to get me out. Jesus, I whispered. She nodded. They say it's about love, but really, they're just clearing the path. We become a speed bump. I looked back at the boxes. What did you do? Got smart too late. Don't wait like I did, Lowell. Her voice had gone low, firm. That night, after she went back inside and the sky turned soft pink, I stepped back into the house and stared at the folder still on the kitchen table. I didn't touch it this time. Didn't need to. I went into the study, opened the old oak cabinet where I used to keep my gradebook. The notebook was still there, small, leather-bound, filled with lists and notes from my years teaching economics. I flipped to a blank page, picked up a pen, wrote one sentence. No one moves me unless I say so. Then I drew a red line underneath, then a box around it. My hand didn't shake. I hadn't lit a fire in weeks, but I was close, closer than ever. The morning sun barely reached past the blinds, casting faint bars of light across the den. I entered with a mission so simple it should have grounded me. Find my Hemingway, the one with the cracked spine, but the shelf where I kept my favorites looked strangely thinner. Half of it was empty. My eyes traced along the line of books, pausing at an abrupt stop beside a gap that hadn't been there before. Then I turned. 2 cardboard boxes by the door, both marked Goodwill in Sharpie. Tamsin's unmistakable writing. I opened the nearest one. Inside, a framed photo of Loretta and me on our anniversary, our wedding album, a small velvet box holding my old service medals. The second box held a stack of recipe books, a few hand-labeled cassette tapes, and a folded apron that still smelled like paprika and soap. My hand found the edge of one more album, and beneath it, empty air. My mouth went dry. I moved to the kitchen, opening drawers, not looking for anything in particular until I was Loretta's recipe tin. I pulled it open and leafed through. Chicken marsala, lemon bars, corn pudding. But her cobbler recipe, the one she wrote on pink stationery with a doodle of a peach at the top, gone. The drawer beneath the sink held a few loose scraps. I reached in and found it, crumpled, oil-stained, ripped at the corner. My chest tightened, not from age, not from heart, from something worse, insult. That paper had been folded by hands that loved, written during a moment when Loretta had hummed to herself in the kitchen, her fingers sticky with butter and sugar. Now it lay tossed like garbage. A chime from my phone pulled me back. Brielle was FaceTiming. Her face filled the screen, bright and toothy. "Hi, Grandpa," she said. I smiled, automatic. "Hey, sweet pea." "Guess what?" she said, bouncing a little. "Mom said the house is going to be ours now, since you're going to the new place." I froze. She said that? Yeah. She said it's already being fixed up. I told her I want the peach tree in the backyard to stay. You planted that, right? I nodded, barely holding the phone steady. That's right. Cool, she said, then got distracted by the dog barking off screen. Gotta go. The call ended. I stood there, phone in hand, unmoving. I went to the study, pulled out the ledger again, wrote slowly, "She's selling what isn't hers." I stared at the sentence for a long time, then circled it. My hand reached for the phone. I called Harlan. He answered. "Lowell?" I didn't speak, just listened to the hum on the other end, then hung up. Evening came with that thick, still air that New England sometimes gets when the sky can't decide if it's going to rain or just press down on you. I heard her car before I saw her. She didn't knock, just came in like it was still her house. Tamsin paced the kitchen, Bluetooth in one ear, talking to someone named Brad. "Yeah, we'll finalize the deposit Monday." He's on board. Already boxed up most of it. No resistance. I stood in the hallway, staring at her. She turned, caught my gaze. Her mouth moved slightly, unsure if she should smile or stay silent. I said nothing. She turned away. I watched her pull the fridge open like nothing was out of place. Her movements efficient, sterile. Later that night, after she left without a word, I stood in front of the fridge alone. I grabbed a yellow post-it and wrote, "My home is not for sale," stuck it dead center on the stainless steel door. Then I stepped outside onto the porch, where the dark had settled in deep. The silhouette of the grill sat in the yard like a soldier left behind after a war. I stared at it, knowing Tamsin probably already had someone lined up to haul it away. The match hadn't been struck yet, but the fuel? It was ready. If they wanted to erase me, they should have started with my memory. It remembered everything. The sound came first, low, mechanical, uninvited. I opened my eyes to the steady hum of an engine idling outside my bedroom window. Curtains parted. I saw it, a black Sprinter van, back doors open wide like arms ready to take. Two men in matching polos were already pulling out flat-packed crates and wheeled dollies. I stepped into the hallway and caught Tamsin in the kitchen. Athletic wear, fresh ponytail, already on her second cup of coffee. "What's this?" I asked, voice still hoarse from sleep. She barely looked up. "Just making the transition smooth, Dad." "Transition to what?" She smiled. The kind of smile that sealed a deal without asking the other party. "No lifting for you. We'll have everything moved professionally." Moved. I followed her into the living room, where the men were assembling a crate beside the bookshelf. One of them glanced at me, then back to his clipboard. "You hired movers? I didn't want to stress you," she said, grabbing a protein bar from her bag. "I never agreed to this. Dad, it's Saturday. They charge extra on Sundays. Let's just keep things easy, okay?" She turned her back before I could answer. I walked slowly toward the window, stared out at the porch. The grill stood alone, still there, but something inside me said, "Not for long." At breakfast, I didn't touch my toast. Tamsin sat across from me, scrolling her phone. "You planning something for the birthday?" I asked. She didn't look up. "We're doing something new this year. No charcoal out back, no cobbler ingredients." She didn't answer. "No mention of it to Brielle?" "Dad," she said flatly. "Just trust me." I did. That's how we got here. She got up without finishing her coffee. Later, while she distracted me in the kitchen, asking if I remembered my medication or had I finally thrown out that rickety lawn chair, I glanced toward the window. Two men wheeled my smoker down the walkway. The grill followed, strapped to a dolly like some forgotten artifact. I didn't speak, didn't stop them. The porch looked suddenly exposed, bare wood, nails where hooks used to hold utensils. It didn't just feel empty, it felt violated. I stood there long after the taillights faded down the street. When I finally went inside, the hallway felt too quiet. Tamsin was pacing upstairs. I heard her voice echo faintly. I crept closer. "Happy birthday to the best dad ever," she said. Laughter followed. She was live streaming. I backed away. Returned to my room. Her voice still filtered through the vent. "Look at this spread." My hand went to my chest. Not in pain, but in disbelief. I opened the Facebook app and found the stream. There she was. Camera panning across the yard. My yard. Plates arranged on my patio table. Kids playing near the peach tree. Neighbors laughing. But not one person asked where I was. No one mentioned my name. Not once. The comments scrolled fast. "Great space. Love the setup. Nice to see the place finally used properly." Finally used properly. I closed the app. Outside. The breeze was warm. Early spring. But the air carried summer's scent already. I stepped out barefoot onto the back porch. No chairs. No grill. Just the fading outlines where furniture had once sat. I walked to the peach tree. Its branches had begun to bud, green fingers stretching toward the sun. I touched the bark, rough, alive. This tree came from a pit Loretta had saved. She planted it with her bare hands, said, "Even when I'm not around, something sweet should still grow here." My hand didn't leave the trunk. I whispered, "They can take everything." "But not this." I turned back toward the house. My jaw tightened. "You just made your move, Tamsin." I opened the screen door. "Now it's mine." I walked back inside, not to rest, but to remember every piece of paper I'd ever signed. I woke early on the morning of my 81st birthday. Sunlight barely crept across the floor, and for a few moments, I let myself pretend. Pretend the grill was still out back, the fridge full of ribs, and Loretta humming while setting the table for guests who'd show up late but full of love. I put on my best flannel, the blue one with elbow patches she'd sewn herself, and combed my hair the way she always liked. I even polished my boots. There wouldn't be dancing, but there had to be dignity. The knock came at 8:13, sharp, professional. I opened the door. 2 men in navy polos stood with clipboards and an empty wheelchair. Behind them, Tamsin smiled too wide, clutching a takeout bag and a small bundle of balloons shaped like the number 81. "Happy birthday, Dad," she chirped, stepping forward like she was about to unwrap joy. "What's this?" I asked, already knowing. "They're here to help transition you. Just a short stay. A little break." I didn't step aside, but I didn't slam the door either. Instead, I stared at the wheelchair, polished handles, folded blanket across the seat. It looked planned. "Just sign here," one of the staff said, pointing to a clipboard. "Temporary care, comfort observation, nothing binding." Tamsin pulled a pen from her purse and handed it to me. My name was engraved on it. Lowell Desmarais. A Father's Day gift from 10 years ago. I held it, feeling the weight of the metal. Loretta would have said that was manipulative. Loretta was right a lot. Still, I signed. They rolled the chair toward me, and I waved them off. "I can walk." The ride was quiet. Tamsin sat up front with the driver. I stayed in the back, watching trees blur into nothing. We passed the hardware store, the diner Loretta loved for its burnt coffee, and finally the streetlight that meant we were leaving Holliston. The sign came into view, Meadowlight Assisted Living. We pulled into a curved driveway, the kind designed to make you feel calm. I felt a different kind of clarity, one that burns. Inside, a nurse greeted me with a voice like chamomile tea. She led me to a modest room. One bed, no photos. A laminated itinerary on the nightstand listed activities I didn't sign up for. "Tuesdays are soup and song," she said, handing me a wristband. I stared at it. "Is there a quiet hour?" "Of course," she smiled. "But we encourage participation." I nodded but said nothing. My voice had packed its bags and left earlier. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. A push notification. "Tamsin is live." I tapped. The screen filled with images of my yard, balloons, bunting, kids in party hats, my grill, back from wherever she'd sent it, my neighbors, holding paper plates and smiling like the world hadn't shifted. "Happy birthday to the best dad ever," Tamsin shouted on the stream, lifting a glass of something fizzy. No one asked where I was. No one said my name. I didn't cry. I didn't blink much either, but my jaw locked so tight I felt it in my ears. I turned off the screen. The room felt smaller now, the walls too white, the linens too neat. An hour passed. Then the phone rang. I picked up. "Lowell, it's Deacon Paletti." My lawyer, retired, but still sharp. "You sold the house?" "What? No." "Well, the new deed just hit public record this morning, but the signature doesn't match the one we have on file." My chest went cold. "I signed something," I said slowly. "Send me a copy if you can. I'll look into it." But something's off. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. The clipboard, the wheelchair, the engraved pen. I pulled out the small notebook from my coat pocket, the one I kept with me always. Loretta had bought it for me the year before she died. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "She stole my name. She stole Loretta's porch. She's not done yet." Then I underlined it twice. Outside. The sky dimmed into that gray blue that made everything feel slower, but my pulse had quickened. The room wasn't holding me. It was daring me to stay still. Tomorrow, I'd ask for the house phone. Tonight. I remembered where the real papers were kept. The morning after my birthday, I woke to the hiss of radiator pipes and the dull scent of bleach. My back ached, not from age, but from the unfamiliar mattress. No birdsong, no breeze, just a brick wall staring back through a narrow window. It looked close enough to touch, as if the world had been bricked shut. Breakfast arrived at 7:04. A young staff member, no older than Brielle, rolled in a tray with plain oatmeal, a single banana, and decaf that had long gone cold. She smiled tightly, avoiding my eyes. "We weren't expecting family to bring much," she said, setting the tray on the table beside me. "Your daughter specified the basic plan." "Basic," I repeated. I didn't touch the food. Instead, I pulled my cardigan tighter and stared at the cup. I wasn't cold from temperature. By mid-morning, I walked to the front desk. The receptionist, a man in khakis and orthopedic shoes, looked up with polite disinterest. "I need to make a phone call." He tapped at his keyboard, then paused. One moment." He turned around and returned holding a yellow sticky note. On it, in unmistakable cursive, "Only emergency calls permitted, per daughter's instruction." I stared at the note, then at him. "I'm her father. This is my name on the mailbox." "I'm not a child. I understand, Mr. Desmarais, but we have to follow the instructions on file." My jaw clenched. Later that afternoon, my tablet lit up with a video call from Tamsin. She was in a cafe, sunlight pouring through the glass behind her. Her voice bubbled through the speaker, loud enough for people at the nearby table to hear. "Hi, Dad. How are we feeling today?" She sipped from a latte cup with her initials monogrammed on the side. Behind her, a woman leaned into view and said, "You're amazing. I wish I could do that for my parents." Tamsin grinned. "It's just about love and making sure they're comfortable." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She kept smiling. "So, everything's good, right? Just take it easy, okay?" I opened my mouth. I wanted to ask about the house, the deed, the paper I'd signed, but before I could speak, she said, "Rest, okay? We've got it under control." Then the screen went dark. Her smile frozen in the last frame. The ache in my chest didn't come from sadness. It came from something older, something deeper, the realization that she was no longer asking for permission. She was speaking as though I was already gone. Evening fell. Nurse Ruthie came in with my medications. She looked tired, but kind. The kind of kindness you don't learn in school. She lowered her voice as she handed me the cup. "We had a patient last year. Same story. Daughter took over everything. Never let him leave." I nodded, eyes fixed on the cup in my hand. "He died in here," she added softly. "Still had his car keys in the drawer." I met her gaze. "I'm not going that way." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with my notebook open. I wrote slowly, deliberately. "The best prisons don't need bars, just silence." Then, under that line, "But I still have keys." I closed the notebook, placed it under my pillow. And I knew exactly who would help me turn those keys. I woke that morning expecting Ruthie's calm steps, but instead heard a brisk knock. A different nurse stood at my door, clipboard in hand. She pushed a small, cream-colored envelope across the table, my name printed in precise block letters. No return address. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was Deacon Paletti's familiar scrawl on a folded page, a notarized copy of my signature used to transfer the house. Forged. My heart thundered, but I forced calm. I tucked the paper in my pocket and exhaled, long and low. Later that day, I pulled out my old ledger, the one I kept during my teaching years. It sat heavy in my lap as I opened to a section titled Contingencies. My pen hovered. Then I began to scribble. People's names, dates, phone numbers, contacts for allies and legal counsel. My mind sharpened. This wasn't just theft. It was a message, and I planned my reply. That evening, I found myself pacing the dim hallway, waiting for Ruthie. When she arrived, meds in hand, I asked in a low voice, "Did you notice a photo on my desk, Loretta's and mine?" She froze, searching my eyes before she admitted, "I think it was removed during intake." My chest tightened. Removed. They were erasing us. Night fell, and I slipped out toward the facility dumpster, flashlight in one hand, hope in the other. I rummaged through torn cardboard until I found it, a cracked photo frame hiding our picture, Loretta's radiant smile holding a peach pie. I brushed off debris and pressed the photo to my chest. No tears, just a vow. They could destroy frames. but not our memory. Back in my room, I reopened the ledger and wrote deliberately. Step 1, retitle trust account. Step 2, alert Garrett Wilson. Underneath, I added, time to teach them I didn't forget how to fight. My handwriting felt firm, resolute. A few hours later, my phone chimed. Tamsin's text came from an unknown number. Dad, hope the new place is treating you well. House almost ready for new tenants. She'd attached a photo of the empty porch, with a vintage grill sold sign plastered next to the door, and added casually, You're welcome. My breath caught. My photo. My home. They thought I was beaten. They were wrong. I held the image of Loretta in my hand and whispered, They think you're gone. Let's show them you're not. In that moment, something inside me shifted from grief to determination. I would not be silent. I would not be erased. Links in my ledger, contacts to friends, to Deacon, to Garrett, were lifelines now. I felt the weight of the page under my pen, seeing the path forward. They sold the porch. They tried to eliminate my voice. But I still had breath, and now I had allies. In the darkness, I closed the ledger, folded the old photo with care, and slid it into my jacket pocket, right over my heart. I lay back in bed, mind racing, chest firm. They thought this place could mute me. Instead, this place had lit the flame of strategy inside me. Tomorrow, I'd call Harlan. I'd lean on those I trusted, and I would remake the narrative they tried to overwrite. Harlan picked up on the second ring. I've been waiting for this call, he said, his voice low and steady, like it always was when something serious was on the line. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. We start now. Quiet. No mistakes. There was a pause on the other end, not from hesitation, just calculation. Tell me everything, he said. I filled him in, voice calm, but each word carrying a weight I didn't try to soften. The fake signature, the trust violations, and now the photo of Loretta nearly trashed like a piece of junk. I didn't even have to say her name out loud. Harlan understood. He always had. I'll dig up what's public already, he said, and I know a guy who can trace where she's been routing all the money. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. She made it personal. Now it's personal back. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet room for a long while, just watching the dust swim through a slice of sunlight. It was the kind of light Loretta used to say made everything look honest. If only that light could burn through the legal lies her daughter had wrapped around my name. Later that afternoon, Harlan called back. His voice had changed, deeper now, less room for doubt. She filed an LLC using your full name, he said. Demaray Heritage, BBQ. It's a lifestyle wellness brand with real estate holdings listed under it. I didn't speak at first. My chest felt tight, not with fear, but fury, the slow burning kind. That name wasn't just a label. It was years of burnt fingers, laughter around a smoky grill, Loretta humming as she brought out plates. Tamsin didn't steal a brand. She took memories and stuck a price tag on them. She didn't just take the house, I muttered. She took me. And now we take it back, Harlan said. We arranged a 3-way call with Deacon Paletti, the retired lawyer I trusted like a brother. Deacon had a raspy voice and a mind that had cut through more real estate fraud than any courtroom I knew. Revoke all power of attorney, Deacon instructed. First thing, I'll prepare the petition with evidence from the signature discrepancies. Then, I asked, then we request an emergency freeze on any pending transfers tied to that LLC, and we shift all remaining assets into a private, irrevocable trust. Call it BBQ for elders, I said. Deacon paused, then laughed. You always had a way with titles. The next morning, Ruthie helped me get dressed. I wore the same gray blazer I wore the day we buried Loretta. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old hopes. Going out? She asked, lifting one eyebrow but not pushing. Not far, I said. Just enough. We drove to a cafe 2 blocks from the facility, just far enough to breathe a different air. Deacon was already there. Briefcase open, eyes tired but focused. He slid the folder toward me. No ceremony. I read each line. Legalese doesn't scare you when you've had decades of mortgage paperwork and funeral arrangements. I signed. Deacon stamped. It was done. Loretta would have wanted this, I said quietly, folding the pen into my palm. Deacon gave a slow nod. She probably would have done it sooner. That afternoon, Harlan walked into a co-working space downtown, looking like any aging consultant with a manila envelope under one arm. He didn't say a word, just handed it to the receptionist and walked out. Inside the box, Tamsin received was a miniature grill, one of those novelty desk pieces people give for Father's Day, and a card. It read, "Some legacies can't be stolen, some names can't be sold." There was no signature. None was needed. Back in my room, the sun was setting. The air had that golden warmth to it that made shadows look kinder. I sat by the window, ledger open on my lap. I didn't write much, just enough to make it matter. I am not what they thought. I am what they forgot. Beneath that, I wrote one more line. Step 3, exit plan. Next to it, I left a blank space, just wide enough for a date, a time, and a name. 2 days had passed since I moved every remaining asset into the trust, and for a brief stretch of morning, I allowed myself a rare kind of stillness. The sun filtered through my window in a soft line across the floor, and for a second, it felt like maybe the storm had passed. Then the phone rang. I let it buzz twice before answering. "This is Lowell. Mr. Demaray, this is Philip Hayes from First Horizon Bank in Framingham. We've flagged a withdrawal request that raised some concerns." I sat up straighter. "Go on." "There's been a transfer attempt of $10,000. It was initiated from a joint account previously connected to your household." I didn't even need to ask. "That account should have been frozen. I never authorized any withdrawal." A pause. The sound of typing filled the line. "Correct, sir. The transfer was processed through a leasing office in Cambridge. The account recipient is listed as Demaray Heritage Wellness Cafe." The air shifted around me. My own name again. This time tied to a storefront, a wellness cafe. Tamsin hadn't just stolen money, she'd turned me into branding material. "So now I'm branding her buildings," I said, flatly. The banker cleared his throat. "Would you like us to initiate a fraud report?" "No," I replied slowly. "Not yet." "Please email me the full statement, date of transaction, and who signed for it." After hanging up, I called Deacon. His voice was clear, with that dry edge of a man who'd seen one too many scams dressed up in legalese. "She's drawing from frozen funds now," I told him. "She's digging her own hole," he said. "The court loves patterns. We'll let her build it deep." "What do you need from me?" "Just get me the official transaction slip. I'll add it to the filing. Then we wait." I thanked him and hung up, chest tightening not from stress, but from something colder. I stared out the window as clouds rolled in, casting a flat shadow over the street below. Ruthie knocked gently. "Got something you might want to see," she said, holding her phone. I followed her down to the small lounge where staff often watched YouTube during breaks. On screen was Tamsin, fresh blowout, fake smile, standing in front of what used to be my garage. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "I just want to thank my dad for being such an inspiration. This whole journey of wellness and legacy is possible because of him." I watched in silence. My knuckles rested against my mouth, but it was the comments that mattered. One read, "Wait, didn't her dad build that house?" Another, "Where is he now? Haven't seen him in months." And then a final one, pinned to the top. "Public property records show the house sold 2 weeks ago under a different name. Weird." Ruthie sat beside me, watching my face instead of the screen. They're starting to figure it out. That night, I received a message from Agnes, a friend of Loretta's, one of the last from the church who hadn't gone silent. She wrote, "Saw the video. Didn't sound like the you I know. Are you okay?" I typed back, "Getting things sorted." Just 3 words. But they tasted like something sturdy in my mouth. The next morning, I didn't shave. I didn't button the top of my shirt. I sat by the window again, ledger open. This time, I didn't write details or reminders. I wrote a sentence in all caps. "Let their lies collapse under the weight of too many spotlights." Then underneath, Next, call Jared. Prepare the Buick. Jared's Buick rolled up the gravel drive just after sunrise. The old engine rumbled low and steady, like it still had purpose. I stepped out with my canvas duffel, light, but not empty. The ledger tucked inside wasn't for weight. It was for proof, for Loretta. It still hums, I said, half to myself. Jared pushed his sunglasses up. And it still listens. We didn't speak much as I shut the passenger door. No goodbyes, just a glance back at the assisted living window, the curtain drawn, like a stage gone dark. I left nothing behind worth waving at. The road south snaked past stone fences and dogwood trees still heavy with blooms. Each mile carried me further from the house I built and the daughter who tried to turn it into a showroom. Jared drove with one hand, his other tapping the wheel to an old Springsteen tune. "You really walked away from it all?" he finally asked. I watched the fields blur into one another. "Didn't walk. Reclaimed." He chuckled. "Town clerk said your daughter tried to pull another title shift yesterday. Got flagged." I nodded. "She'll keep trying." We passed a farm stand selling peaches. Loretta would have made us stop. I remembered the funeral, the way Loretta's casket sat quiet while everyone whispered what came next. Tamsin was already talking logistics. "We'll need to simplify things. Dad, just for your sake." Even then, I should have seen the ledger as armor. "Pain loses its grip," I muttered, writing the words into the margins of the book. "When truth walks beside you." Jared's phone buzzed at a rest stop. "Deacon," he said, handing it over. The message was short. Court date confirmed. Injunction granted. She's frozen out. I folded the screen down and exhaled through my nose. She'll have to find another surname to monetize. Jared smiled at that one. "You always had a line ready." By late afternoon, we reached Plymouth Bay. The air carried salt and quiet. Jared had arranged a rental just off the coast. Nothing fancy, but the kind of place that didn't echo. He set a kettle on the stove while I unpacked the ledger, the photo of Loretta, the pen I hadn't used since Tamsin first asked me to just sign here. "This was never about revenge," I said. "It was about my name." He slid a mug toward me. "You still got it." I stepped outside as dusk painted the sky. The fire pit sat unused, ringed in stones. I flipped open the ledger and wrote, "No legacy worth keeping was built on theft." Then I turned to the final page and left it blank. The only one. Jared leaned in the doorway. "So, what's next, Mr. D?" I looked at the stars. Not for answers, but for something steady. "Depends who shows up asking the right question." I heard the knock just after sunrise. 3 soft taps. Uncertain but deliberate. I opened the door to find Brielle standing there in a windbreaker, her eyes red, her hair pulled into a hasty bun. "I didn't tell Mom," she said. I needed to hear your version." She looked smaller than I remembered, less like the girl who once ran through sprinklers in my backyard, and more like a woman trying to decide who she was allowed to believe. We walked out to the fire pit behind the cabin. Morning fog still clung to the grass. I handed her a blanket and sat in the old wooden chair, the one Jared said came with the rental. She sat across from me, legs tucked beneath her, like she was bracing for an impact. I told her everything. From the moment I found the envelope to the live stream I was never mentioned in. I didn't embellish, didn't soften anything, just facts, delivered with the calm that only comes after you've been gutted and stitched back up. Her voice cracked. "She never told me any of this." "I know," I said. "But now you know." She wiped her cheek, then reached for my hand, back inside. I opened the ledger, flipped past pages filled with scribbles, court notes, memories, strategy. I landed on the final blank page. "This one's yours," I said, handing her the book. "If you earn it." She held it like it might shatter. "I want to." My phone buzzed. "Deacon," I put him on speaker. "Good news. Fraud charges accepted. The house transfers officially voided, and Tamsin's been subpoenaed." I nodded. Brielle looked at me, unsure what that meant for her mother. "About time," I said. Someone asked the right questions. That night, we lit a small fire. Brielle found marshmallows in the pantry. She roasted hers until it blistered, laughing when it dropped into the flames. "Tell me something about Grandma," she said. I stared into the fire for a long moment. Loretta once danced barefoot in the yard during a thunderstorm, said the sky was just jealous of her freedom. Brielle smiled through her tears. "I wish I'd seen that." "You did," I said. "You just didn't know what you were looking at yet." When the flames turned to embers, I picked up the ledger one last time. On the final page, beneath Brielle's fingers, I wrote, "The only legacy worth protecting is one that cannot be bought." And then, quieter to myself, and this time, I wrote it in ink. The fire crackled. I raised my cup toward the night and whispered, "This one's for her.